house. I am sick of the rumors, the stupidity that people believe this crap. Let's go over the situation right now. We have a new general manager and a new head coach that are literally going over the roster, right? I mean, I'm sure they have. They're making decisions. They're probably hours every day looking at film of the players that are on the team. Who are they keeping? Who are they cutting? They probably know that they're cutting Michael Clemens, right? It probably doesn't take too much looking at film. And they already have, like, there's a, Savage is still there, right? He still has the consulting gig. He's probably running the draft part of it. They're looking at people like that. It's very hard for me to believe that at this point, as they're getting to know the roster and making these decisions, that our new GM is on the phone trying to trade up in the draft for a quarterback. And if he was, who would he tell and who would know? That it would get out to these so-called media guys. Like, how would they get in? Who are they talking to that could possibly come out of the rooms of One Jet Drive and say, like, who would be leaving the, like, everyone's saying, oh no, we have leaks again? Why do we keep having leaks? Maybe we don't have leaks. Maybe they're just liars. Maybe they're just liars. People come out and say, according to sources, the Jets are trying to trade up for Jackson Dart. You're a liar when you say according to sources. That's what it means to me. It literally equates to liar. And I understand they have to protect their sources, and even if you had a source, you can't necessarily give it. But the problem is the same thing that they're allowed to do it, because they're allowed, that same law or rights to protect their source is the same thing that makes it open season to just lie. Like, I need an article today. I need clicks. I need this. I need that. So what am I going to do? Let me lie. Instead of saying the Jets might be trying to trade up to get Jackson Dart, let me say, according to sources, or the Jets rumored to be trading up to get Jackson. I love when they say Jets rumored to be trading up or thought to be, because then it could be basing it on any fan. Like, any fan, anybody who mentions it could then make somebody do a headline of Jets rumored to be trading up to get Jackson Dart. Look, there is no way that we know anything and that anybody knows anything. And there's no way I'll believe that unless you show me evidence of it. And I think that we need to start demanding more evidence before we start giving into nonsense. Because people could say anything they want to say. We already saw Rossini, right, get caught in her lie. We already know she's a blatant liar, right? And she was caught cold, like, oh, the Jets demanded that he can't go on the Pat McCaffrey show. And that turned out to be a lie, and they try to blame it on the aggregates. But meanwhile, there's a live interview of her saying, the Jets told Aaron Rodgers in meetings that he can't be on the Pat McCaffrey show. Otherwise, he can't. And we know she's a liar. We know that they're liars. So don't believe any of it. Caden, I agree with you. What's up, Todd? What's up, Caden? What's up, Yeti? The goatee is magical. Thanks, man. I'm trying to grow it really, really long. So I appreciate that. But anyway, going back to, you know who I would believe? If Jake Asman tells you the Jets are trying to trade up, then the Jets are trying to trade up. Okay, I believe Jake Asman way before I believe any of these Main Street media beat guys. Because it's like, who would be already leaking things out of the room? And who would be talking about it? Like, how many people would be in that conversation of we should get traded up? I could see Phil Savage going into a room with Aaron Glenn and Moogie and Spielman, right? Like, maybe there's like those 5 guys, like 4 or 5 guys in a room saying, right now, are there any quarterbacks we like? Are there any quarterbacks that we believe could be the future that we would invest in right now? Whereas, meaning, I'm not talking about 4th, 5th rounds. I mean, they're going to have that conversation too, but I'm talking about serious shot. Like, we're not going to take a quarterback in 2026 kind of thing. We're going to go for it now, right? There's no doubt in my mind that they all sat in a room and had that conversation. And maybe Phil Savage came and said, with all his passion in the heart, screaming and yelling, "All my talent people, we love Cam Ward." Let's say we love Cam Ward. We love him. We should do everything we should get to get him, right? Let's say that's true. Let's pretend that's true. What? Which one of those people would go outside that room and leak that information? Which one of them? Because if that's true, leaking that information hurts us, right? Because then that tells the other team, oh, it's already getting out. The first thing they want to do is trade up for Cam Ward. So, right? It's a poker game. It is poker, right? When you're talking about trades and these NFL teams, they're not friends, right? This is competition. This is everybody trying to be the best. They're not friends, right? So now we're supposed to believe now that either Aaron Glenn, our new GM, Moogie, Phil Savage, the consultant talent personnel guy, who I've met in person at the Senior Bowl. A lot of us, I've seen him. People have spoken to him. Dylan T from Jet Nation has spoken to him. This is a good guy, a loyal guy. That's why he's the one that's still around. Which one of these people would go out and harm this organization by letting the teams in front of us know that we wanted to trade up? Because before we show our hand, let's pretend we did want to trade up. We wouldn't just show our hand and do that. It's a poker game. The first thing we'd wait for is a team to shop their pick, right? It's a stare down. Because if Tennessee suddenly came out and called us on the phone and said, "We're interested in trading down. Are you willing to trade up?" That's a much better way to start a negotiation than for the Jets to just let it out there that they want to trade up for Cam Ward. Because then Tennessee doesn't have to say they want to trade their pick, right? They get to say, this is basic 101 negotiations. It's basic. It's very, very basic. This is like common sense. You don't even have to be trained. Like, it's the most common sense thing in negotiation, is that you never let the other side see how much you want something. You never allow, because the winner of a negotiation is the one who's the least emotional, the one who feels they need it less, the one who's desperate, who desperately wants to have it happen, is the one that's going to lose that negotiation. So when you hear a rumor that say the Jets are trading up to get this quarterback, what you're saying is, what we're believing is that one of the top people in the organization, because there's not many people left, we cleared it out, right? We're hiring new people. But there's no way early in the conversation that this is the entire building is in. They're not sitting in a room with 50 people saying, should we trade up for Cam Ward? This is 4 to 5 people in a room making an overall strategy for a team they just took over. No one is leaving that room and saying anything to the media. I promise you that. There's just no way. Let's just check this out. Somebody retracted a message. Jake, go with the 9 o'clock shadow. Yeti saying, "Oh, I'm not a happy hour guy, but I'm picturing guys in the 80s and 90s having the exact same convos every day at 5 p.m. I'll always watch. I respect your grind." You must be talking to Jake, because nobody grinds like Jake Osman. He is the grinder of grinders. And I've been very lazy, but for good reason. I want you to know I have not abandoned this channel, and it's not laziness, and it's not lack of commitment. I want you all to know the reason why you don't see content from me is because I'm like literally graduating in 2 weeks with another master's degree. And if you know anything, if you've ever gotten a master's degree, you know anything about these programs, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of time, especially when you are taking it seriously. And I'm doing like a freaking internship. So it's like I'm working for free and seeing clients and everything while I'm having classes and papers. And it's like a condensed program, right? So it's like I'm doing this in under 2 years, getting a brand new master's degree and license. So that's why there's not as much content, because like I'm sitting here right now. I had to take my jet background down. I got tired of putting it up and taking it down because I can't have it up with clients. Can you imagine providing therapy to a client that lives in San Francisco and you have a Jets banner behind you? It doesn't work. So I have this portable thing, but I got tired of moving it back and forth. I said, you know what? I'm not even doing enough content because I'm so busy. So do you really need to have a Jets flag behind me in order to listen to what I'm saying? Does it really matter? So I figured, nah. But anyway, if you're wondering, the reason I'm not grinding like Jake Asman grinds is because, well, I mean, let's be honest. Jake is making a living doing this. He's on ESPN radio. He's successful. I'm just some punk. I'm some bald guy that's just talking to a camera. I mean, there's a big difference between us. But he's a grinder. He's a grinder. And everything he has is because of grinding. So that's a great word, Yeti. I agree with it. I like your use of the word grind. But getting back to the Jets, no, I do not think the Jets. Okay, so it's not. I can't say whether I think or not we would trade up for Ward or we trade up for, like, there's rumors that we're going to trade up into the first round and give our second, third, and fourth round pick to trade up into the second round and take Jackson Dart. Like, my reaction to all this is I can't know what their talent evaluators think. There are teams that are so far apart and people in the way they evaluate talent, there's no way to know. Like, I don't know. I can only go by what Phil Savage has done for us. If he has anything to do with, like, the Joe Douglas, like, and the picks that we've made, we can get some kind of tendencies in what they like, in their athletes. We could say the one thing that worries me is, yeah, maybe like if you said, why would the Jets take Jackson Dart? Okay, Jackson Dart is a guy, I understand his results are good. I understand people get very excited about what they're seeing as far as the results of his play. They see the touchdown pass, or they see him run, or they see him make, run and throw, and they see the talent, the athleticism, and I understand that, right? And that might eventually translate to the NFL. Now, if the Jets loved him, the reason I think that they would love him is because they overlooked Zach Wilson and the fact that Zach Wilson didn't have good footwork and had issues. They overlooked that because they looked at the results of his game. To like Jackson Dart, okay, so 90% of people that love Jackson Dart are full of shit. They know nothing about him. They know, and when I say that, they're watching highlight reels. I can make a highlight reel of any college player that will get you excited about that player. Okay? Almost any college player. If I go through every game and take out their best plays of the game and make one highlight reel, and then announcers that are hyping up the player, oh, he's great, look how great he is. You literally have Zach Wilson. Like, that's how everybody got fooled. That's why everyone loved him. That's why I loved him. I got fooled. I was watching these highlights of him, and it was like, but then I started watching every play, and that was a whole different thing because I learned a lot since then and what to look for. But that aside, the problem with Jackson Dart is, he could end up being a superstar. I'm not saying he can't. What I'm saying is, Jackson Dart right now, if you watch him throw a football, anybody with a kid, imagine you have a son, watch the film of all 22. Get some film. Look for videos that don't do highlights, but do film review. They're out there. And look at his mechanics. Now imagine anybody with a son. If your son threw a football the way he's throwing a football, would you allow it? Would you say, yes, that's the way you throw a football? Because people say, Jeremy, how do you know how to throw a football? What do you know about mechanics? Well, I was a teacher, and I worked as an assistant principal in an elementary school, and I know enough, like the basics of any father or any uncle or any adult teaching a kid how to throw a football that's played any amount of football in their life. Okay, imagine that. I know enough when they're throwing wrong, right? Like imagine when someone throws bad, how bad it is, right? When somebody is like, they're not stepping into the throw. Let's say they're pointing their elbow the wrong way, or they're doing this. They're doing the push. I don't want to be sexist, but you remember when we were kids, people used to say they're like a girl because instead of winding your arm around, you push the ball. So we all have some knowledge of what it looks like to throw a football. We're all capable of watching a real quarterback. Like we could watch Aaron Rodgers and what it looks like when you are in the pocket and throw a football to get an idea of what it looks like. Jackson Dart has the worst it's so bad that I know it's bad. See, Josh Allen didn't have the best mechanics, but I wasn't an expert enough to see it that blatantly. When you pointed it out to me, I said, oh, but I wouldn't have noticed it. But when you watch Jackson Dart throw a football, you will laugh. His foot is the wrong way. He's throwing, his like body is diagonal when he throws the ball. It's like he's throwing across his body, and he's not even throwing across the field. So what does that mean? He gets the job done. So obviously there's some talent in that arm, right? Because in spite of the fact that he's throwing a football completely wrong, he's throwing the ball 40 yards, 35-yard darts. He's whipping the ball around the field. So I'm not denying the fact that there is something to like about this kid. But you have to understand that knowing that if you look around the league at every quarterback, you will not find a quarterback that has mechanics that bad. So you can either believe he's going to be successful with poor mechanics and he's going to be an outlier. He's going to be this player that you'd never teach your son to throw a football that way. You'd never teach your daughter to throw a football that way. But yet it works for him, right? And he's going to be maybe one of the first players that you ever say that about, because every other player in the NFL, no one's doing what he's doing in mechanics. It's not that bad. You can't, I don't care what quarterback you name. If we watch the film, it is not as blatant as what Jackson Dart is doing when he throws that football. Okay, the mechanics are so bad. It's not even upsetting. I laugh. I'm actually laughing because I can't believe his coaching. Like, is it him ignoring the coaches? Like, I can't believe it's allowed to even happen. That he's all the way in college football, successful, a prospect in the draft, and he's still throwing like that. But anyway, the talent must be incredible. He must have incredible talent in his arm, right? Like something is working with this kid, right? But understand, I believe that in order for him to succeed in the NFL, he's going to have to fix his mechanics and I'm only basing that on, I don't see any quarterback succeeding without being able to throw a football. You know what I mean? Like without knowing how to throw it properly. So I have to, at some level, it catches up to you. You have to be able to step through on your throw, because NFL safeties, cornerbacks, tighter coverage, like, you know what I mean? Like you can't put yourself at such a disadvantage that you're not stepping into your throw. It's okay when you're running off script and you have to off balance make a throw and rely on arm talent, but it can't be when you're in the pocket. See, the problem is this is happening when he's in the pocket. He's dropping back in the pocket and in clean space, throwing a ball incorrectly. And that just doesn't make sense to me. So here's the thing. You're going to have to try to fix that, right? And, you know, Tigo says it like you can't fix it. I don't know. I mean, I think Josh Allen's mechanics may improve a little bit. So the question is, but let's say Tigo's right, because I don't even know. This is not my expertise. I'm not pretending to be an expert. I would think you have to, what Tigo is saying is you have to teach somebody when they're young, right? Like Tigo just told me his little kid is throwing a football really well. So if Tigo noticed his kid was doing something wrong in his mechanics, what is your kid, 3 years old, Tigo, 2 years old? I mean, he's a little kid. So Tigo could teach him the way any father teaches his son. Son, I need you to step into the ball, right? You're stepping out. You got to step forward, right? Whatever it is that what he's doing wrong, if he's doing something wrong, you teach him. And then after years of doing it, it becomes muscle memory. It's trickier when it's an adult already, when it's a kid in college who probably has already had a million coaches. He's probably had a million coaches try to get him to throw the ball. You have to assume that somebody said something in his life. In high school, at some point in his life, somebody said, son, that's not how you throw a football. Like, that's not the right way to throw a football. Your footwork needs, here, do this, do that, right? That's what coaching is. So you have to assume that this kid is basically ignoring the coaching, or he can't do it, which is why I'm saying Tigo is saying that. So that you can't fix it or something. Yep, you can fix footwork, things like that, but throwing motion is almost impossible to fix. Okay, so I don't know. When I look at Jackson Dart, I don't know if it's footwork or his throwing motion. Because the top part of his body looks like his throwing motion is okay. What I have a problem with, and you tell me if it's footwork or not, is that it's like he's facing the wrong way. Like the bottom of his body is not in line with the top of his body. Like he could throw a football and his body's facing forward and he's coming forward with his arm like it looks like fine, but his legs and knees are pointed a different direction. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know, is that footwork or not footwork? What I'm saying is, if you draft this kid, and Jackson Dart's your quarterback, and I think what Tigo is saying, in all likelihood, that might be his throwing motion. Like this is who he's going to be, and you're gambling. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm not saying, because he's doing it in college, but you're gambling that he's going to be one of the only quarterbacks you've seen in the last 30 years that could succeed throwing a football the way he's throwing the football. Off balance, not stepping into the throws. Like, there's a reason why we teach our kids to throw the right way, right? Now, look, I'm not going to argue. If NFL scouts are that convinced that he's going to be able to continue to succeed, regardless of how he throws the football, fine. But anyway, I got into this tangent because there was rumors that Jets are going to trade up to take Jackson Dart. I don't want to take a guy that is going to stop us from taking a quarterback in 2026. And I know Wild Wade is on that train. I know Tigo's on that train. I know a lot of us are on that train. A lot of us want a quarterback in 2026. Now, if our evaluators, if the organization is in love with Cam Ward, if they're absolutely blown away by Cam Ward, they love him, they honestly believe he's a superstar. I don't know more than them. They're professionals. It's not my opinion. In my opinion, it's not true. I don't see that. I see any quarterback could be successful, but I don't see enough evidence that I'd feel comfortable trading up to take Cam Ward. There's things that I have concerns. And it's not that he's bad. It's not a negative. I don't think he's bad in any way. There's just not enough that tells me, oh, he's going to be... Like, if I'm trading up, right, and giving up on taking more talent, and we already have so many roster holes, and we have so many issues in our roster and empty holes that we're going to have to fill. If I'm trading up, I want to believe 100% this quarterback is definitely going to hit. As much as you can believe it. Like, I think that if you trade up from 7 to 2 or 1, and you give away all your picks and next year's first, you've got to believe that that quarterback is generational. To me, a generational kind of guy is the kind of guy that almost cannot miss. Like, Trevor Lawrence has been a disappointment, but his floor is still kind of high. He's still an average quarterback. Like, it's got to be the worst case scenario. Is there an average functional quarterback? The worst case scenario. There's no part of me that believes that's the case with Cam Ward. He might end up being great. He might be dynamic. He might be great. He might be this mobile quarterback. He might make us a winner. It might be great. But I think his floor he could be really bad. Like, there's not enough evidence because he's had one really good season and a really good team and a really good system. Not his fault, not punishing him, not criticizing him because if it's not his fault, he doesn't deserve to be punished or criticized because he plays on a great team. It's just that I haven't seen enough. There's years of him where he doesn't look too good. So, again, if the Jets love him, and they see it, and they say, no, Jeremy's wrong, because they're better eyes than me. If they see, no, he's going through progressions. This kid goes through progressions. This kid is quick. He gets rid of the football fast. If they're seeing these things, they watch much more film than I, and they understand more than me, fine. But I just don't believe it. Like, so to me, it would be shocking and terrifying if we traded up to get him. Now, if Cam Ward fell to 7 and we picked him, I'd feel much better than trading up for him. And then I'd kind of be like, okay, they don't see it the way I see it. Like, they really believe and they're convinced that Cam Ward's going to be a great quarterback. They obviously believe it. What I would be mad about, because I could accept that, because I'm not egotistical enough to believe that I can evaluate a quarterback better than the Jets personnel department. Like, I don't believe that I can evaluate it better. I'll have to sit there and say, okay, maybe I was wrong, maybe. right? I hope I was wrong because I'm going to want Cam Ward to be a superstar, right? I wouldn't say wrong because I'm not saying that he can't be. Like, I want to make that really clear. I am not predicting that Cam Ward will fail in the NFL. I am simply saying I am not convinced enough to take him. I'd rather wait to 2026. That's all I'm saying. There's nothing about Cam Ward's game that makes me not believe that he could be a great player. I watched him. I watched Miami play. I watched their games. He's fun to watch. There were moments where I got excited and said, oh my God, he's really good. So I am not a Cam Ward hater in any way. I want to make that really clear. But so I will respect the decision of our personnel department. But if we trade up to get him, that's a very different thing. Because then you're telling me you think he's generational. If you're trading up to get him, you're telling me that you believe that you're basically, as a GM, putting your job on the line. Because we don't have that luxury right now. If we had a better roster, we might have the luxury to gamble and go for it and give up picks like the Niners did with Trey Lance. The difference was the Niners had a stacked roster, right? They're a Super Bowl team, even with that. I mean, Brock Purdy didn't hurt in the 7th round, kind of saved their ass. But they were able to survive those picks, losing those picks, because they're better drafters than we are historically, and they draft well, and they're able to do it without first-round picks. But the point is, most GMs will get fired, because we have a ton of holes. We have no safeties, I can tell you guys. We're short a linebacker, most likely. We have no safety room. We have no tight ends. Not just one tight end. We have no tight ends. We have no WR2. We don't have a WR2 receiver, assuming Adams is gone, right? I don't even know if we have a WR3. We don't even know that Malachi Corley's a WR3. Because I'm assuming Lazard's gone too. So we have wide receiver needs. We have no tight end room. We need a right tackle. We still need depth at guard and center. You want to go with Wes again this year? We have a ton of needs. So if you trade up to get Ward, you're not only giving away our picks this year, you're giving away next year's first. You're saying next year we don't get a first round pick. That means you're putting everything into this kid working out. And if he fails, that's going to be 3 miserable years of losing and not having the tools or the ability to really build a complete roster the way we want to build it. That's my opinion. I think it's, maybe some people think, oh, it's not that bad. I think it's very damaging if you trade up, give away a lot of your picks, give up next year's first round pick and picks, or second round next year. If you give up that much draft capital, I believe that really damages the team, especially when you already have a lot of holes in it. If we had a complete roster where we only needed a couple of things, I'd say, well, we have a team though. We have a complete team, so we're not dead in the water if we miss, but we don't have a complete team. We have a lot of holes. So I think most of you will agree that if we were to trade up, we have to be right. We have to be right. So I just don't see a GM coming in, a new GM, and saying, I'm going to trade up and I'm going to put my entire job on the line. Because a 5th year, don't get me wrong, he's super talented, he had a great year. But a 5th year quarterback had a great year as the final year. Because generational to me is from they're a freshman on, right? Like Trevor Lawrence, Andrew Luck, all these guys we built up and hyped up. And I'm not saying they lived up to the reputation. A lot, I'm not saying, with Luck, it was injuries and things. I'm not saying they lived up to it, the hype. What I'm saying is there was enough film and years in history with these quarterbacks that you could understand any fan was happy to trade up. Just get the quarterback. I want the quarterback. I'm all about, if the quarterback is there, I will live and endure 2 years of agony to end this nightmare, this 40-plus year nightmare of mine, where we can't seem to just have a franchise quarterback that lasts for 15 years. I mean, we had Ken O'Brien when I was young. Ken O'Brien was a great quarterback, but he lasted 4 or 5 years, got hurt, and was gone, right? So every time we get one, something happens. Chad Pennington looked like he could be a freaking franchise quarterback. Rotator cuff, same thing as Ken O'Brien, never really recovered, right? So we never get to have our franchise quarterback. I'll do most anything. I think it's worth almost any price to get that franchise quarterback. But man, it has to be a freaking stud. Like it has to be a guy. It has to be a guy that Dom C, me, and Tigo, all three of us agree on. That's rare, right? Tony the GM too. Like all four of us have to be united. It has to be such. It has to be the kind of guy that makes every one of us in agreement, right? Now I know some people love Cam Ward and think he's that guy, but a lot of us don't. A lot of us, some of us like Jackson Dart. Some of us like Shedeur Sanders. So what that tells you is someone might be right, and one of these quarterbacks might end up being great. But what it tells you is none of them are a home run. None of them are this generational talent. Because you see how we're all divided? If any of these guys were generational guys, everybody would be fighting up to trade for them. And Tennessee would never do it. The only reason people believe there's a chance Tennessee is going to trade out of that spot is because there's no generational pick here. Like, do you think the Giants would let us get in front of them if they really believe, and they might believe, but if they really believe, if it was Trevor Lawrence coming out this year, right? If Arch Manning had already played 2 years of college and was eligible and was a stud, it was fantastic, everything we think he was going to be. He tore it up in college. You had a generational guy coming out, a guy with like Andrew Luck all over again, or Trevor Lawrence all over again, coming out into the draft. If you had a guy like that, everybody would be fighting and everybody would be agreed. So I think we could all agree Cam Ward is not that. Right? Sanders is not that. There's no guy in this draft, right, that generates that kind of excitement that every fan is wishing their team would trade up and get the guy. There isn't that quarterback. So obviously I'm going to be upset if we trade up to get a quarterback like that because that's reaching, that's desperate. There is no standout guy. It doesn't mean that Ward might not be a superstar quarterback. It doesn't mean that Shedeur Sanders might not be a superstar quarterback. They both might be superstars. One of them might become a superstar. Jackson Dart might become a superstar. Any of that might happen, right? There's no question about it. There's 10 quarterbacks in this draft that might be a superstar, maybe 20. Nobody thought Tom Brady would be a superstar, so anything is possible. We have no idea. Anything is possible. That's not the point. You're not rolling the dice and throwing a dart on that, though. You're not throwing a dart, pardon the pun. But you don't trade your entire draft. You don't trade picks this year, next year, and gamble your franchise on a guy. You just don't. Unless it's like a one-in-decade kind of guy. I'm not going to say generational when they say once in every, that's bullshit, right? But once every 10 years at least, sometimes there's two guys, but once every 10 years you get a guy whose floor is basically, the worst case, he's an average quarterback. The floor, right? And their potential is they could be the next Peyton Manning, right? Or whatever quarterback you want to fill in the blank. Anybody else I don't want to trade up for. Unless you're that kind of a person, I don't want to trade up. Especially when next year that might exist. And I don't know if it's going to be generational next year in one player, but I think there's going to be a lot of really, really good quarterbacks that are going to rank higher than the quarterbacks that are coming out this draft. And I think that it's going to be a very generalized consensus. Like, I think that most analysts, almost anyone that truly scouts these quarterbacks, that has a real rating system, that has a scoring system, I think there's going to be multiple quarterbacks next year that have a higher rating than any of the quarterbacks coming out this year. And I think that any of the quarterbacks this year would be definitely not top 5 last year. See, you can't trade up for that. That's silly. I mean, again, if Cam Ward was to drop to us or Sanders was to drop to us and the Jets selected them, I would have to say, well, they had there's at least a minimum of 5 people in that decision that have watched hours and hours and hours of film on this quarterback. And these guys are more trained than I am. So I would humbly sit there and say, well, it's not what I would have done. To my level of knowledge of football, it's not the move I would have made. But I'm going to support my team. and I'm going to root for them. And I'm going to hope that they're right and that they know what they're doing. And I'm going to hope that it's not one of these GMs, which there are a lot of, that are just reaching and hoping, but that it's based on real factual data and real knowledge and something that they really are seeing. So back to the point is, there's no way at this point that I'm willing to believe that the Jets have already had conversations and it's leaked that the Jets are trying to move up for a second round pick. This shit doesn't even happen until draft day. Do you know why it doesn't usually happen until draft day? I think that it doesn't happen until draft day because it's a poker match. It's a poker game. Teams rarely come out ahead of time and start telling you what they want, right? Like if the Jets, there's no way anybody who would leak that the Jets were interested in trading up for a quarterback is betraying the organization. It's a betrayal. You'd have a quarterback that's betraying you'd have a GM or the assistant or whoever it was is betraying us because they're giving away valuable information that will help the other side in a negotiation. So this has got to be, 1 second. Okay. There we go. So I got him, Dano. Dano got him. Okay. Yeah, Dano, what took you so long, man? Get rid of people like that. The only thing I trust in my moderators is don't get rid of someone you don't like because you don't like them. But my moderators out there, if somebody is just clearly doing shit and just putting in junk and trolling and doing all that stuff, I am not a subscriber hungry guy. I don't care. Just get rid of them and block them. You know, the only thing I trust is don't ever do it to somebody because of your personal dislike of them. Project Prospect says conversations definitely happen before draft day because you have to use the validity of the team's willingness to move down. Yeah, I think that the conversations happen before draft day, but it's fucking February, and our front office just got in to their positions. I'm not saying that, and I said in the beginning of this whatever you want to call it, this session, that I am sure that Moogie and Glenn and Savage and these guys, 5 or 6 guys, Spielman, have been in a room and they've talked about the quarterbacks coming out in the draft and they've talked about the possibility of trading up. I'm sure they've talked about the possibility of trading down. I'm sure they're talking about the possibility of taking a quarterback in the 3rd round or the 4th round. I'm sure that they're going and having all these conversations. And I'm sure that if there is an interest in trading back or trading up, I'm sure that, yes, there may have been light conversations or feeling each other out. We saw the Giants do it in Hard Knocks, right? We saw them call a team and kind of check out and get a feel for, hey, we'd be willing to do this or we'd be willing to do that. Like, I'm sure all that goes on. But what I'm not believing is that somebody is leaking that at this point. If it was like 2 weeks before the draft, a leak might come from another team. Another team might say, we did this, we had this conversation. But I don't believe now, at this point in February, in the middle of February, that we're having conversations with teams to a serious enough level that they are then going out and leaking that information. I just don't believe it. I don't believe the other team would do it. Like, I just don't believe it. I could be wrong, but I don't believe it. I think it is full of crap. Because there's no way that and it just sounds so stupid. Like, do you really believe that could be real? I mean, if we did, then we hired the wrong GM. I promise you. If we have a GM that said we're going to trade we're going to move up, we're going to trade our 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round pick to move up to get Jackson Dart, I'm waving the white flag. Like, call me in 3 years when this GM is gone. All right? Because that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. That is so stupid. And here's why. Because even if you can develop Jackson Dart into a good quarterback, even if you can make that happen, with what tools? Like, what resources are you going to put around them? You're going to put this young quarterback into a team that doesn't have a tight end, that doesn't have a WR2 or a WR3, that doesn't have a right tackle, that has a defense that doesn't have a safety, that needs a linebacker, that needs a defensive tackle. You're going to put a quarterback, a new quarterback in that situation and think that you're going to be a successful franchise? That's ridiculous. That would be a ridiculous way to build a team. It's just ridiculous. That's not how you build a team. If you want to take Jackson Dart in the second round because he's there, fine. I think you're burning a second round pick most likely, and I think you're putting us in grave danger of losing out in 26. But at least you're not just giving up all the other picks, because we need our third round pick and we need our fourth round pick. We need those picks. So do conversations take place? Fine. But it's a game of poker. And let me tell you something. If they called Tennessee and then Tennessee leaked it that the Jets were talking to them, do you think we're ever talking or trusting Tennessee again? Do you think there's not a non-disclosure understanding between these guys? Do you really believe that we just openly talk to them and make no condition of staying quiet? I mean, and how many times do we have to prove that these are all rumors and lies? Every year it's the same thing. Every year. And 98% of the time, it is bullshit. It is freaking proven to be a lie. It never happened. And maybe every single team in the NFL right now and all the GMs are talking about possibilities. Maybe that's a normal thing, right? Hey, like if I'm taking to 15th and there's a guy I really like and I think he's going to be gone, I need to be in the 10th or 11th pick. Maybe I'm calling up Peter because all these guys know each other. Hey, Pete, is there any chance you would trade back? Is that something you're considering? Like, is that possible? Hey, Dano, get rid of that guy. So that's J. Cole, the loser. He had very bad parenting, so that's the result of very bad parenting. You become J. Cole. So let's get rid of him. So they talk, but that doesn't mean you go out and you tell the media about what the other teams are doing. Oh, the Jets are trying to trade up with us. I mean, I just don't believe it. I don't believe it. So what does that mean? That means that I'm not panicking. It might seem like I'm panicking, but I'm really just angry at the bullshit rumors. Like, I'm not worried. I am not thinking any of this. Because first it's Cam Ward. We're trading up to get Cam Ward. Then we're trading up into the second round to get Jackson Dart. It's like one thing after another. Right? So which one is true? So if you say both are true, then you can't take it seriously, right? Because that means we're just having conversations. That means we're feeling people out. Fine. Right? Now you're just feeling people out. God. 3 years ago, I started talking to this retarded kid. And I know we're allowed to say retarded now. Thank you, Donald Trump. And just the biggest loser in the world. Just trash. And he has like 50 accounts and won't leave me alone. It's like, but eventually they'll all be blocked and none of us will have to endure him anymore. Just screaming for attention, lonely human being, screaming for attention. Just really sad. If Jacksonville cut Kirk, it opens the door then for T-Mac. If Jackson cut Kirk. Oh, Jacksonville cut Kirk. Well, I am very, very concerned that T-Mac, my guy that I want the Jets to take, is not going to be there. Because, Yeti, sorry, I'll close my other 49 accounts. I'm very concerned that that T-Mac's not going to be there. Because the only hope that the Raiders aren't going to take a wide receiver, in my opinion, is if Sanders is there and they take Sanders. A lot of people are writing off the Raiders and saying that they wouldn't take T-Mac. I think it's the most obvious thing in the world. They just lost Devontae Adams. They have no real WR1. If the Raiders are not taking a quarterback, of course they're taking a wide receiver. And I could be totally wrong, but to me, when I say of course they're taking a wide receiver, I want you to know and I want to qualify that what I mean is, in my mind, I can't believe somebody's saying Golden is better than T Mac. That is ridiculous. And you know what's funny? I'm not going to say it's ridiculous because I'm not going to say it's ridiculous. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm not going to say it's ridiculous. You might like him. It's your opinion. I'm sorry about that. That was a gut reaction from my eyes. My eyes see T Mac as much better when I watch the film. There are attributes I like a lot better. But there's a reason Golden is projected to be a first round draft pick. And a lot of times, the number one guy on the board, the highest ranked guy, ends up not being the best guy. And a guy like Golden turns out to be the best. So, so it's very possible. I didn't watch a ton of Golden. I watched a little bit. It's hard to watch wide receivers, guys. When you watch all 22, it's so hard because there's 80% and 90% of the plays have nothing to do with the wide receiver. So it's like the most boring thing because you're just waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting. And a lot of times you can't even see the route because like even the all 22 film, it doesn't cover the full route. So it's really hard to watch wide receivers. But if you like Golden because he's a great route runner, I'll check it out. It's just hard. I don't know how to tell if the film isn't the right camera angles. Like sometimes you just can't, you just can't see it. So it's hard. I have a tough time evaluating wide receivers. I like T-Mac just simply because of his size and his hands. He catches the ball away from his body. As soon as his hands make contact with the ball's locked in. Like you never see him bobble it. You never see him drop it. Like it's like the second the ball makes contact with his hands, the ball is locked in. That's what I notice about him. He definitely is a hands catcher. I love watching guys who catch with their hands. He creates space. That's why I like him a lot because he creates space, but also he can do contested catches when he doesn't. So when the quarterback underthrows him, which happens a lot because he doesn't have the greatest quarterback in the world, on film when he's going deep and he has to come back for the ball, it's like watching. He's like a basketball player. It's like it's like me playing against a fifth grader. Like I love how he goes up and gets the football. He has great tracking skills. He'll change direction en route to the football. Like I just love the guy. Now Golden, it's just harder to watch. I just don't see it as much because he plays maybe against tougher competition. He's not as big a part of the offense. Whereas T-Mac, you get to see a lot of plays. There are games, there's a game where he had like 300 yards receiving and like 12 catches. So there's so much film on where you get to watch and focus on him catching the ball and doing everything. I mean, I could look at Golden's highlights, but I don't trust highlights because when you look at highlights, I don't know how many plays came in between. I don't know if there were tons, I don't know how many times they throw the ball to him and he drops it. When you watch film and you watch a real game and another game and another game, you get to see everything. You get to see how often do they drop passes and, and why they're dropping the pass and is it their fault? How much space are they creating? When you're watching highlights, you're watching the best reps they've had. You're watching the reps that they've won. But I want to know, for every highlight that you're seeing, when you see the highlight reel of a player, you might see against one certain team 2 highlights, right? And I want to see what about every other play of the game against that team, right? So maybe he makes a really good 15-yard play. Maybe he makes another catch, a screen pass, and he dodges a tackle and for a first down, right? And you notice in the highlights there were 2 plays, and he had 2 good plays and got 2 first downs and made 2 good plays. The question then becomes, what did he do the rest of that game? Were those the only 2 receptions that game? Was he not able to create space the rest of that game? Maybe he was creating space all game and the quarterback wasn't throwing him the ball and you say, holy shit, he could have had 300 yards passing that game. Like, do you see where I'm going with this? So it takes a lot of time to watch that much tape. I try to. I'm always whenever I take a break from schoolwork, I go into the database, I pick a player, watch a little bit of the player. I wish I had more time. I wish I can analyze. That's why I won't argue with what what our guys do. Like I'm not going to argue with the decisions that are because I can't sit there and pretend that I have the time. There are guys that watch film every game on a player, every single game they watch them. I obviously can't do that. So yeah, I just do the best I can. I think there's a 70% chance that Ted is there at 7. 0% he's there at 8. So you think we're gonna take him? I don't understand how we don't talk about as Jet fans, like that. Most of the Jet fans, I don't know or understand how we don't talk about wide receiver being as big a need as it is. Like I understand that we have Garrett Wilson, but like in today's NFL, can you really live with one wide receiver? Who's our number? Who's our WR2? I'm assuming that Lazard is gone. I'm assuming that Devontae Adams is gone. Who is our number 2 receiver? Xavier Gibson? Like, who is our WR2? Like, Malachi Corley, I want to believe it was the coaching staff and that he could still pan out and be good. But you know what? When you think about it, our coaching staff wasn't necessarily wrong about the other wide receivers that they never gave a chance and gave up on. Like, they weren't really wrong. Like, think about it. We traded Elijah Moore. Is he making us regret it? We got rid of Mims. Did Mims make us regret it? Like, we weren't exactly wrong. So we're all assuming Malachi Corley, he's got to be good. The one play we saw him do something good, what did he do? He intentionally he freaking needed to show off, and he dropped the football, and he cost himself a touchdown. Now, I'm willing to forgive that. It was a boneheaded play, rookie mistake. But maybe that combined with the fact that we barely saw him get reps, maybe there is something wrong with him. Like maybe he's not the most professional guy. Like, isn't that a possibility? So with Malachi Corley, I'm not decided that he's not the guy. But to me, he's just this big question mark. And even if Malachi Corley pans out, he's a slot. Like, he's not going to be a boundary receiver, right? So it still doesn't answer the question, who is lining up opposite of Garrett Wilson? Who is the other boundary receiver? So and I understand tight end is a big need for us, right? But you can get a tight end in the 2nd or 3rd round. And a lot of tight ends, I know people can say, oh, you could take a wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round, but that's much less of a hit. Let's be honest. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's less of a hit rate as with tight end. Whereas when we name the best tight ends in the league, they're rarely their 1st round guys. I mean, Bowers was an exception, right? Obviously. But Pitts didn't work out that great, right? And Laporta was a 2nd round pick. Kelsey was a late round pick. The guy forgetting his Kittle for San Francisco was a mid to late round pick. My point is that you can get tight ends in the middle rounds. We blew it with Ruckert, and I think it was more the coaching with Ruckert. I think there's a chance it was the coaching that we just didn't have a good tight ends coach, and Middleton sucked, and our offensive coordinator sucked, and he regressed, and they didn't develop him. But or he just wasn't good enough. But that doesn't mean that the next crop of tight ends that come out. So like tight end is a position, like the other positions, I think are positions that are easier to address in the middle rounds. Like I'm not worried about defensive tackle. There's so many defensive tackles that are not worthy of being first, like top 10. I know Mason Graham is the top of the heap, but there's so many day 1 starting defensive tackles in this draft. So I understand why it would be great to take Mason Graham. I understand why it would seem so dominant to have Q and Mason Graham together. I get it. But I don't believe you're going to find a day 1 starter wide receiver if you do that, starting in the 2nd rounds. Whereas if you took McMillan, I believe you have a day 1 WR2, and I believe that guaranteed in the 2nd round you have a day 1 defensive tackle. Guaranteed. I believe that you have him in the 3rd round. And I believe the 2nd round, if Xavier Watts is on the board, I'm a big Xavier Watts guy. But there's other guys, too, that if they're there, you have to take them. There's a linebacker that's Jahir, whatever that Domsey loves. And if they take him, I won't be upset about that because we have a lot of holes to fill. But some of the holes that we have to fill, I believe, are fillable with starting guys all the way up to the fourth round. Whereas with some positions, I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that there's I believe that there's a dart throw. There's going to be some wide receiver who's going to go in the second round or later, maybe more than one, that ends up being really good. Like, that's going to happen. It happens every year. But I don't know which one, and I don't think there's going to be many. And I think the percentage, even with Golden, Abuka, or McMillan, I think those guys are the high percentage hits. And I think after that, it gets very slim and it's a long shot. It's very unlikely we're going to find a wide receiver that's going to fill that need. Whereas with tight end, there's a guy named Arroyo, or whatever, that I love. Might even be available in the fourth round. I wouldn't wait that long. I'd grab him in the third round if I could. But there's guys, Ferguson from Oregon. There's a guy that's going to be there in the third or fourth round. There are tight ends that might, I'm not saying it's guaranteed, but there are tight ends that give you a chance that we might be able to fill the room. Plus, there are tight ends where you could get acceptable. It's not going to be the guy we want. Maybe we have to wait till next year, right? If the draft pick doesn't work out. But in free agency, you can get a tight end that's experienced, that's functional. Whereas wide receiver, man, it's hard to function without a WR2. It's hard to function. Then they just double cover Garrett. They take him out of the game. You don't have a WR2 who can get open against, against any good cornerback. And then what are you doing? Like, you got to have a WR2 in this league. We're just in that kind of league now. I mean, there are teams that, unless you're going to bulk up. There's more than ways this is going to count. Maybe it's going to be they're going to freaking bulk up the offensive line even more, get that right tackle, bulk up on a great blocking tight end, and we're going to just become this running team, and with a good receiving tight end and Garrett Wilson, and that's enough in the passing game. There's more than one. Kansas City, right? They barely have a WR1, and they've made 2 Super Bowls in a row since Hill left. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but they have a guy named Patrick Mahomes. We don't, so there's that. So... yeah, Eddie's saying the same thing. I guess there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? We can do it that way, but we don't have Josh Allen and we don't have Patrick Mahomes, right? So the 2 teams you just named, look at their quarterbacks, right? Every other team with a normal human quarterback needs wide receivers that get open, But, so, yeah, if we draft a future superstar, we're not going to have a very good quarterback this year. So, and if we do draft a young quarterback, wouldn't you rather have a WR1 and 2? Wouldn't it be a great situation for them to come into a team that we have a pretty good offensive line, right? It looks like we're going to be able to hold the offensive line together and have a pretty good offensive line. So if you have a good offensive line and you have 2 really good receivers and just an average or an okay tight end that could be a safety valve, and we know we have good running backs that could fill that hole that of not having a great receiving tight end, because we happen to have running backs that are very good receiving running backs. That's more than sufficient. Like, if I'm a young quarterback, I'm pretty happy about that. I got a good offensive line, I got 2 stud wide receivers, and my safety valve is my running back, right? I got running backs who could block for me or take off and receive. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about that. If I don't have that WR2, though, man, I better have a very good running game. It better be that we can grind and do play action and get Garrett Wilson open. Because if you can't scare them with your running game and they're allowed to double cover Garrett Wilson and you don't have a WR2, I don't know what to say. We better draft we better get Harold Fannin, and he better pan out, and he better be a hell of a freaking tight end. And that's how you do it. Kelsey allowed Kansas City to not have a WR1 or 2, to not have a great wide receiver room, and Patrick Mahomes, right? And the best coaching in football. There was a lot of other things that we don't have or have not proved we have. So assuming nothing, making no assumptions, starting just with the base from scratch, not knowing that you're going to have the greatest quarterback in football or one of the top 3, not knowing that, you have to go in with the assumption that you need 2 wide receivers, right? I think it seems pretty obvious to me, but I agree that If they go a different direction and they say, nope, we're going to bulk up the offensive line, we're going to get a great tight end, maybe even two. We're going to bulk up that room, have a great receiving tight end, a really that can block a little bit, but also have a great blocking tight end. We're going to go with a lot of freaking 12 personnel, and we're going to be a hardcore running team. Like, if you're telling me that, then I agree. I don't know if Garrett Wilson's going to be too happy about it. Well, he might. If he's the only wide receiver on a team like that, he still might get his 1,000+ yards and he's going to get his targets. Right? So I guess, so yes, it's possible. It's going to be hard, though. It's going to be difficult. You expect an all-pro year out of Tippmann. Yeah, it would have been great if Carter Warren panned out. Shit, guys, I got to go. Got a client in 5 minutes. So, gotta go. It's been fun. A lot of you stayed with me and hung out, so I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by. Just wanted to say, I don't agree with the rumors. I'm not a rumor guy. I believe it when there's proof. Otherwise, it's all just talk to me. It's all just shit to talk about. That's what I'm saying. So what I would say is, I guess the bottom line is don't panic and don't believe it until you see it. And you know what? We're going to see it. Like April will come, the draft will come, and we're going to see what we do. And we're going to know what the results of the draft are. So the rumors are just rumors. What really happens, really happens. And I think that, I'm a guy who's going to wait to see what really happens. Thanks for being here, guys. Respect all your opinions. Hopefully, whatever the Jets do, hopefully they make the right decisions. They're the ones that got to be right. They're the ones we need to hit on this draft. Meanwhile, we'll just have our fun and talk about the guys that we like. Take care, everyone. Go.